Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm super excited about today's episode. I've got an awesome guest. She's joining me from Toronto, Canada. Her name's Julie Zuzek, and she is the Corporate Yogi. And what the Corporate Yogi is all about is adding an element of mindfulness or consciousness, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, to the business world. And so Julie works mostly with entrepreneurs, but with people in business and in the corporate world. And her business tactics are more in a mindful way. And so I thought she would make a really amazing guest to talk to all of you yoga teachers out there about the business lessons that she's learned through her experience in the yoga world and her experience coaching from a place of mindfulness. And she also has a super, super cool new project that she's launching. I'm going to keep that a secret, and she can tell you herself on the interview. So without further ado, here's Julie. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. It's super cool to have you here. If you could start by telling me a little bit about yourself, the Corporate Yogi, your business, that would be amazing.
Yeah, sure. Will do, Amanda. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you reached out and connected, because there's so much synergy in our businesses and how we're trying to help people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So my background is actually working in corporate. So I worked in marketing and communications for about 15 years. And I worked with a lot of small companies sort of starting up, and I would help them build, their brand and their website and their logo, and help them find clients and get the business kind of up and running. And then I'd get bored and I'd move on to a new company and help them out. And so, again, after about 15 years, I worked in Vancouver, and then I moved to London, England, and I lived there for 3 years. And the last company I was at, I was getting a little bit bored, and I decided it was time for a change in career. And around the same time was when I did my very first yoga teacher training. Because, if you're ever bored in your career, like, everyone always gives you the advice to find something that you're passionate about and then follow that path, and it'll eventually turn into a career. And about 3/4 of the way through my yoga teacher training, did I not get this sort of divine guidance of the business name, the Corporate Yogi? And I wrote it down in a journal just as I was studying. And I was like, actually, there was 3 names that came through. 3 different names. Corporate Yogi was one of them. And then I was like, okay, so I'm going to finish up my teacher training. And it was about 6 months later that I decided I wanted to go off, become a business coach, and start my own business.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so cool that came out of a yoga teacher training.
It really did. And it's kind of, I always say that it's divine, for people who are starting a business the way that I did. That's why I kind of, it was hard. I wish I could say that starting a business was easy. It wasn't, especially the first 2 years were really tough. And that's one of the reasons why I kept going, because I knew that this was pure from my heart. I knew that this was a calling of what I was meant to do, to teach people how to fuse business and spirituality. And it wasn't coming from my head, because sometimes when we have an idea in our head, it's very ego driven, and we miss, the obvious red signs and red flags that say, oh, there actually isn't demand for this business, or, you're just trying to make money. There isn't something pure here as an opportunity. And so that's one of the reasons why I've always just known to keep going, because I knew that this was what I was meant to do.
That's amazing. I love that story so much. Cool. And so how did your business consulting change, or the way that you approach business after doing your yoga teacher training?
Ooh, good question. Well, for me, it was really about shifting my personal experience and who I was. So once I started taking yoga, because really I studied for, as a student, about 11 years before I did my teacher training. So that impacted me tremendously in the corporate environment, because I was a lot calmer, and it allowed me to be less reactive when, things would go wrong, or colleagues would, try to upset me or trigger me. Yeah. I was fine that I could react and handle myself so much better. And so over the years, I just noticed that I was calmer. I was, still working hard, but less stressed. There was less impact on my body physically, but it was really the mental impact that I noticed the most. And that's purely the yoga that really helped me to not only understand how to put things in perspective, but learn how to breathe through stressful situations and learn how to not react.
Yeah, definitely. That resonates with me for sure. Like, I feel like just the changes in myself over the last few years from practicing more and more yoga consistently is massive. Mm-hmm. It's like when you're in rush hour traffic, instead of like screaming at people who can't move just like you're just breathing and being calm with it.
Yeah. One of my friends always says, how can you be mad at the traffic if you're part of the traffic?
Yeah. That's such a great way to think about it. Hey?
Right. And it's so true. And that applies to so many different areas of our life. We're in something and we're so frustrated and angry at everybody else, but we're right there in the middle of it too, causing it. So it just, the perspective, I think, is so important.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And when you started gathering clients with the Corporate Yogi, what were people's reactions to it? Like, were they immediately like the idea of it, or were they kind of like, I don't need mindfulness, I just want business lessons?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Corporate Yogi is kind of a catchy name. And like I said, I take absolutely no credit for it. It was given to me, who sent me. So always people would hear the name and be intrigued, whether they were into yoga or into business. It didn't matter. Like, it was just the kind of name that was really catchy. But what I did run into in the very beginning was everyone just straight up assumed that I was a yoga teacher on site and I would go out to companies and teach yoga classes. So that was definitely something that I had to address in the very beginning. That was something that I would do, but I knew that that was never really what I wanted to grow this business into. It was really in the very beginning about coaching people one-on-one and also doing team development and team coaching.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I know that the name definitely drew me in as well. I was like, ooh, Corporate Yogi. I love this name.
Well, it's intriguing, right? And so over the years, that's been my challenge of, okay, it's a catchy name, but I need to get people to really understand what that means. And for me, it's that contrast of two very different areas of our life, right? It's like East meets West. It's the physical practice. It's the mental practice. And so it's finding that balance between these two different parts of ourselves, which I think is so aligned with both of us and our businesses, because you can have something in your life like yoga, or if you look at your spirituality, that can be a really important part, but you still have to ground it in business logic and business reason to be able to be successful, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I love too that you've mixed business with mindfulness, consciousness, spirituality. And then I'm sort of trying to teach people who are already in that mindfulness, spirituality, that it's business as well.
Yeah, it's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, it is perfect. And so what sort of things do you teach your business consultants, like the average person who comes to you and you're working with them? What sort of mindfulness or consciousness things would you teach them or practice with them?
Well, I actually, I work with people, mainly entrepreneurs. I do have some people that are in the corporate world still, who are, employees and either want to move to a different area of the company, or they want to change jobs, or they want to start their own business. But for the most part, my ideal client or typical client is an entrepreneur who's starting up their own business. And so that's perfect for me because I get to help them on 3 different levels. So I get to help them. I always say that your mindset or your beliefs are the blueprint for your success, because deep down inside, whatever you believe is what you create your reality. So if you believe that building a business is hard, then of course you're going to create that as your experience. So the beliefs and the mindset is really how I help people and how I coach them. Mm-hmm. And then we have the actual tactics of the business strategy. So we get into someone who's maybe needing to build a strong brand or build a website. So I can give them advice and guidance as to what the next steps are to take, how to build a community, how to build an audience of raving fans who are going to go out and rave about you to other people in the community and help you find, your next potential client. And then the third level, the top level, is really the vision and the purpose. And that's where we get deep down inside into someone's heart and soul and understand what is it that they are longing to do with their business? Who do they want to help and who do they want to serve? And if you don't have a clearly defined purpose, then it's really difficult to run a business, because you'll be jumping all over, chasing shiny objects, and you'll hit those really dark dip days where you'll feel frustrated and you'll just want to give up. But if you have a clear, defined purpose, then no matter what comes up, you just keep coming back to that, and it keeps you aligned in the direction of where you want to go.
Yeah, that's so true. That's something that I've definitely found, even with, starting MBOM, and my boyfriend and I co-host a travel podcast that we're, turning into a business. And that resonates with me for sure, as somebody who's kind of on that path to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And, that's why I love what I'm doing and what I've built, because I get to help people at 3 different levels. And so sometimes, you'll go work with a coach or a strategist and they'll just listen to you and tell you what you have to do. But for me, it's about going deeper, because I like to use the analogy of dandelions in your backyard. So if you look back in your backyard and you want to go hang out on a gorgeous, sunny, try really hard, a sunny afternoon, as it's March and there's snow outside, you want to hang out and there's dandelions in the backyard. You can go take a pair of scissors and cut off all the tops to the dandelions, and you've gotten rid of your weed problem. But have you? Because they're going to grow back. And so you have to address it with a real solution and get to the root of the matter. Get to what's causing those weeds to grow and get rid of them in a permanent sense. And that's really what I try to do when I work with entrepreneurs, is to get deep into their programming. And their programming really is their beliefs. It's their mindset. And so if you can shift that and help them understand what their fears are, what are they scared of, and really get to that deep, deep place and shift that, then they are really being set up for success into the future, because then they can take that mindset, that belief, that openness to success and helping and serving others, and they can really go anywhere and grow any kind of business from that.
Yeah, definitely. I closed my eyes and just imagined the dandelion. So that's a great analogy. I remember when I was a little girl, it was a constant problem in our backyard. My mom would always be like, the dandelions, they keep growing back.
Well, I always remember, I could never see them as weeds. I always thought they were pretty. We used to pick them and make little bouquets of dandelions all the time.
Yeah, that's actually the first thing as I was closing my eyes and we were taking scissors to cut them off. I was like, I don't understand why people hate dandelions so much.
Yeah, they're so bright and pretty, aren't they?
I know. They're actually a really beautiful flower, so it's kind of funny. But I guess just people have decided that dandelions are weeds and we need to get rid of them.
Sadly, yep.
And so was there any point where you wanted to teach yoga, or did you teach yoga at all, or have you stayed mostly on?
Yeah, I absolutely did. So my business was started up at the exact same time that I moved back. So I'm located in Toronto right now. Mm-hmm. And so when I left London, my working visa was with my company. So when I decided to quit that job, it was time to come back to Canada anyways. So I decided, instead of going back to Vancouver, where I'd been for 12 years before that, I decided to come back to Ontario, because that's where I grew up and my family's here. And so I set up the business in a brand new city. I'd never lived in Toronto before.
Wow.
And so it was new business in a new industry. Probably most smart people would have said, oh, okay, your career is in marketing. Why don't you set up a business doing marketing? That probably would have made a lot of sense, but I didn't do that. I started a whole new business in a different industry that I didn't have any experience in. So that was kind of cool. Very challenging. So building up a new network and a new community of friends. And so in the very beginning, I did teach a lot. So I taught, I have 2 different certifications actually. So I did a general hatha certification. Mm-hmm. And so I taught around the city, and I also did my hot yoga certification. So for the first year and a bit, I taught a lot. I had my regular classes. I subbed a lot. I ran around the city. It was literally corporate yogi, because I would go teach in the morning and then go have a shower and put my business clothes on, go to a meeting, and then go teach a lunchtime class, put my yoga clothes back on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's really exhausting. So I did that a lot in the very beginning, because that was kind of how I was making a living as I was getting the business up and off the ground. And so, but the great thing about that was it really gave me confidence to be in the front of the room, because I do a lot of public speaking now, and that wasn't necessarily something that I was comfortable doing before. So it really forced me to get that fear out of the way, because you're in front of that class like week after week, whether you want to be or not. Mm-hmm. And so that was such a blessing, and it let me really, really build a great community of people here in Toronto. I mean, if I look back now at who my closest friends are and who's in my core network, it's all people that I met through yoga, either as students or fellow teachers.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a cool story. And
yes.
So at what point did you stop teaching and just mostly do like the business side of it?
Well, I actually, I slowly weaned myself off classes. So I would, give up this one and then give up that one. And I just gave up I kind of held on to one last morning class. Yeah. That was tough to kind of let go of everything and say, oh, I don't teach in the city anymore. I only teach on retreat. So I held on to that one for a good year and a half, but I just gave it up last fall.
Oh, wow.
So I don't teach in the city anymore. So that was kind of sad.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably a tough transition, but I feel like when you're ready to make those transitions, and you got to kind of listen to that.
Absolutely. And the way that it really kind of happened was, it was about this time last year that I decided that I wanted to launch my podcast, Conscious Business. And really, as you know, podcasts take a lot of time. And so for me, it was really saying, okay, well, where is that extra, 5 hours to 8 hours going to come every week to produce a podcast and publish it and do everything related to that? And it was really deciding that I had to let go of teaching to be able to make room for the podcast. So, at least that's how I positioned it to my students. It's like, hey, we can still hang out every week, but you're listening to me in your earphones instead of me in front of the class. So. Yeah,
definitely. It's kind of like same a little bit.
Yeah.
It's sort of the one-sided concept where they only ever really hear you.
Yeah. So that was my
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. And what sort of, business lessons did you learn through your teaching?
In terms of like interacting with the students, or?
Yeah, as a yoga teacher, like interacting with students, working at different studios.
Well, I think the one thing that I love, if there's any, you probably have lots of yoga teachers listening, yeah? Yeah. I would say a really, really important thing to do as a yoga teacher is to be in that mindset of thinking about building a brand. And so quite often, one of the biggest mistakes we all make, myself included, is we try to be all things to all people. And we try to generalize and do a little bit of everything, whereas it's better to be more specific and specialize in a specific area. So for a yoga teacher, that might look like the specific style of yoga that you teach. If you want to say, I specifically only do Ashtanga, or you teach a specific series, so you become the best at that one thing. Or the other way to look at it might be in a specific target market. So I have a friend here in the city who specializes in teaching to plus size people. And so he actually has built a whole niche around that. So it can be the target market that you're trying to reach. It could be to men. It could be, your teaching style to fuse wisdom, or to fuse breathing or mindfulness into your yoga class, but find something that you can do that is unique, that is specialized to you, and really focus on that so that you can be the expert in that. And that is what people will remember you for.
That's a great piece of advice. Mm-hmm. I think something that I've heard a lot as a yoga teacher, and I feel like it's kind of put out there, is this idea to say yes as much as you can. And I definitely feel like there is benefits, especially when you've just come out of teacher training, to say yes as much as you can to build up your experience. But then finding your niche within the things that you're saying yes to, and starting to say no to the things that don't fit in that, so that you can really be good at one thing, I think is great.
Yeah, that's a good point to differentiate like that, Amanda, because in the beginning you want to say yes to everything, and you want to teach different classes and teach at different studios until you find that one thing that you are really good at, and then specialize and niche from there. I was actually just having dinner with one of my old studio owners that I used to teach for, and he was saying something really interesting, is that when people first start from their yoga teacher training and they want to get, a class on the schedule or regular opportunities, he said it's really, really competitive because he already has a full-time teaching slots taken with senior teachers. And so to have new people kind of come into the mix, it's really tough. And he said the people that he does sort of let through and give opportunities, it's the people who are really aggressive and persistent. So just because we're in this realm of spirituality and mindfulness and we believe that sometimes you don't have to be aggressive and approach something and be determined to try to get an opportunity, but you actually do. And getting good teaching slots can be really competitive. So you have to treat it like you would be getting a job if it was in another area of business or some other area of your life. You have to find the places you want to teach. You have to reach out to them, have a conversation, build a relationship, do whatever you can to really be part of that community, and keep letting them know what your intention is. Hey, do you have any opportunities for subbing? Hey, can I teach a community class? Can I do a workshop to help drive attendance? So find that opportunity and then keep building that relationship with the studio owner and, treat it like a business opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's amazing advice for people to hear. I think that it's really important to remember that if you want to make it your career, and especially your full-time career, that it is a business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a lot of people who sort of struggle with, okay, I'll just be, a yoga teacher as like a fun hobby, and I'll just do it when I can. And I understand that there's this sort of there's this point financially where you might have to hold on to your full-time job for a while before you can let that go to become a full-time teacher. But at the same time, having that availability to be like, I'll teach your 6 a.m. classes, like I'll sub whenever you need a sub, is huge.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it never ceases to amaze me how many yoga teachers are not morning people. I'm a big morning person, as you could tell. And so for me, many of my teaching slots were first thing in the morning. And so when I had to take a vacation and sub out those classes, they were impossible to get rid of. Like, you'd have to beg people and do favors to get them to come teach your 6:30 a.m. class.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost harder to sub out like a really early morning class than it is like a weekend class. Like people are so much more willing to teach on their weekends than they are really early.
So true.
Yeah, I've taught quite a few early morning classes as my way of like, yes, I want to teach for you. And I mean, I don't love getting to the studio at like 5:30 in the morning, but it's also, you do what you got to do. And the energy that people bring to a 6 a.m. class or 6:30 a.m. class or even 7 a.m. is crazy. Like they're there to practice.
They're diehard. And, I had like the most loyal diehard fans. And I loved that experience because to me, you're setting them up for the day. Like you are the foundation. What you say to them that morning and is going to be ingrained in their brain for the entire day. And, and people tell me all the time, hey, remember when you told us to breathe, or remember that story? I thought of that later that afternoon. And so I don't know. I just think that that's such an opportunity to really, set them up in a good mood, help them get physically conditioned, mentally conditioned, and then send them off to just have like the best day ever. And I don't know. I love that.
Yeah, no, I love that as well. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so as combining sort of like the corporate yogi, like your business side of things with your yoga training, what are some other pieces of advice that you would give yoga teachers?
Mm-hmm. Well, building a brand and finding a niche is really, really important. So once you have that specific style you're going to teach, or the specific niche of who you want to teach, or what you're going to want to be known for, start to build a brand around that. And that can be just really simple as an Instagram account or just, your simple Facebook page, and start to really collect things and collect a community around that. And the other thing I would say that's really, really important is sooner rather than later, start to build a list. And what I mean by that is really simple, just a collection of email addresses from people. And so it doesn't have to be expensive. You can do it all for free. And a great tool to use is Mailchimp. And you can sign up and collect, I think it's up to 1,000 or maybe 2,000 email addresses, and create a list in Mailchimp and send them out emails for free. So there's no excuse to say that it takes money. But it's a beautiful way to start to build a community, because you never know down the road what it is that you want to do. And I work with a lot of teachers or other coaches who want to run retreats. And so that's one of the first tips that I always say to them is, if you're going to sell a retreat, you've got to have a community of people that you're going to sell to. And the best way to reach them is to get their permission, obviously, to send them out an email. So that's one of the really, really important things to do. And then the second piece to that, I would say, is make sure once you start building the list, you send out something at least once a month. And it can be just an update about, you know, some tips for eating healthy, or what to do before and after class, or it can be kind of socializing your life and different things that you're going through. However you want to communicate to your community, find something that's relevant that they want to hear, because as you collect email addresses and people to be part of your community, you want to maintain regular contact with them, because if you don't, then when you do send them something a year or 2 years later, they won't remember being part of your list. Mm-hmm. So start the list, keep nurturing and adding to it and growing it, and send something out on a regular basis and really build the discipline. Trust me, you will be so thankful once that list grows, and the time will come that you'll want to host a workshop or do a weekend retreat or do some sort of specialty class. And you'll be thankful that you've got all that collection of email addresses gathered up in one place.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I use Mailchimp personally, and Mailchimp's actually really fun to use. Like, it's super user friendly. You get to like build your own, the way your newsletter looks with your pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's easy to use. Definitely easy to use. It's fun. Walks you through everything. I'm not very tech savvy, so for me, I find it really easy.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. Like, if things get too difficult on my computer, I get frustrated with it. As much as I practice yoga, the computer is the quickest way to get me frustrated, and I have to take a step back and breathe deeply. But yeah, I've never had any issues with Mailchimp at all. It's been so user friendly, and it's just next. You just do everything you need to do. You preview it, schedule it, send it off.
Yeah. So it's so easy to use, definitely. So, and start small. You know, a lot of times people are insecure and, you know, they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to wait till I know 100 people, or I know 100 people in my class. Just start with 3 people, and your mom and your sister and your boyfriend can be on that list. Start the list, start small. All lists with like 40,000 people started with 3 people. Mm-hmm. You know, like, so don't wait. Don't have that under construction, I'll be ready when sign, you know, on your chest. Just start. And again, it's back to mindset, right? You don't have to wait till you have the big brand recognition of Rodney Yee to act like he does. You are an expert. So go out there and really act as if.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder too, that I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, there's no point. Like, you know, I've only got, 3 email addresses or 5 email addresses. Like, they don't want to hear from me. And it's this reminder that you need to just start doing it, and it'll grow that way. It's not going to grow if you don't do anything with it.
Exactly.
And in your experience, was it best to sort of create just like a little, like have a piece of paper at your classes and just like gently remind people that if they want to stay up to date with you, they can just sign up there? Or how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, you can do, that's a great idea. I think that's really smart because, we, especially, for everyone listening in Canada, for all your Canadian listeners, you do have to, have permission for people to ask, to be added to your email list. So that's a great way to get it. Or you can just simply send out an email and they can sign up, or have a sign up sheet on your website. So lots of different ways to do it. But even whether it's the law or not, it's just, it's just kind. It's just general manners to have someone's permission to add them to your list.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we can all relate to having an email address and getting, like a ton of emails. Like, I get so many emails in a day that aren't actual people communicating to me. They're from people's news lists or promoting things. And I never feel good if I get an email where I'm like, I don't know how this person got my email address.
Yeah, that can be frustrating. And that's the other thing, is to make sure that when you're sending out emails, you're not selling in every single email. You want to provide value, right? So you want to have some sort of, an article or a blog or a post or something that's going to teach people or give them actionable tips or steps that they can really incorporate in their life. And then, every once in a while, if you have something to sell, you can sell that. But you don't want to just have, people be on your list and try to sell to them constantly. That's not a good way to build community.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just wondering your opinion on, in terms of naming your brands in the yoga industry, do you have an opinion on whether or not it's better to do like a first name, last name company or to name it something differently? Like, for example, if I was like Amanda Kingsmith Yoga versus something else.
Yeah, I've seen success both ways. I mean, the one thing I will say is when you're starting out, definitely go out and buy your own domain name if it's available, like the URL.
Yeah.
So have that and sit on that for sure. I'm sitting on mine. I'm not sure whether I'll use it or not. I've seen success with both, going both ways. The nice thing about using your name is that then you have the opportunity to kind of shift and pivot the business in a different direction. So like say you start out with yoga, but then down the path you want to get into nutrition. So then you can still use that same domain name if you have a completely different business under that.
Yeah, that's
so if you had started it as Amanda's Yoga Palace, and then you wanted to get into nutrition, then that might make it kind of tricky, right?
Yeah, definitely. If it's kind of like specified towards something, then you have to.
And you have
to create another business.
You have an amazing name, right? So King is a great name. It's really powerful. So it depends, what your name is, how easy it is to say and spell. No one can ever spell my name. So that's why the Corporate Yogi was a gift, because no one would be able to find me online if they heard my name out loud.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, my name is so English that occasionally I get like Kingsman or like Kingsmith or Kingfish was probably the weirdest, but it's usually pretty standard. Like people get it and there's no mispronunciation once they see how it's spelled. Exactly.
So that's a blessing. Yeah. You have a beautiful name.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a question about, you said that having a vision for your business is really important. Do you feel like that's the same thing when you come into the teaching world as a yoga teacher, to have a vision as to sort of where you see yourself in 5-10 years with your career?
Absolutely. Yep. I think it's really important because when we just live day to day and just keep kind of reacting to things, then you'll find it really difficult to grow and ever get anywhere. Whereas if you like I always say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's good to have kind of a 1-year plan as to what you want to accomplish. And I always advise my clients to pick 5 big goals. And the biggest mistake everybody makes is, they start off the year and they have a list of 30 things that they want to get done. And then nothing really gets done. You kind of move everything forward just a little bit. So pick 5 things that you want to get done within the year. But then I think that's really smart to have a 5-year or a 10-year plan of where you want to be. So for example, if you have, you might be teaching now, but you want to do some sort of like integrated practice that has like an energy healing component to it. So that within that 5-year time frame, you want to be getting that other certification or doing your, some Reiki training or something else like that, or Thai massage would be a really nice complement. So you can know that you have to have, those allocated funds to be able to get that training, and also the time frame as to when you're going to fit that into your life. And, goal setting not only makes us more successful, but the things that we track. And that's just a great fact that the things that we track and measure are always more successful than goals that we just randomly think about doing.
Yeah. It's kind of got that accountability to it a little bit more.
Absolutely. And then the other, like the yogi side of it, that's kind of like the strategy thinking side of it. But the yogi from the heart part of it is when you have a dream, like a big picture vision. And, whenever I do my meditation, I always drop in a piece at the end, which is just a guided visualization, but really getting into that feeling tone of from my heart, really thinking about where I want to be and what that's going to feel like. And when we activate that dreaming part of our brain, and that every cell in your body really aligns towards that vision, that's when you really start to make things happen. That's how, like you and I kind of were matched up and came into each other's circle. It's like that sort of ability and those opportunities come from a place of dreaming and holding this big picture vision. That's how you'll naturally just draw things to you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what sort of advice would you give for somebody who maybe sort of just entered the yoga world and is like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't even know if I want to teach. Like, I'm just going to try this out and see where it goes.
Well, the one thing I will say, a little tough love, which I always like to give, is the yoga teachers are notorious for playing small. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by this is, again, we were joking about, when we go through yoga teacher training, everyone, well, not everyone, but like the majority of the people in the class say, I don't really want to teach. I just love yoga. Mm-hmm. And I call BS on that, because I think that if you're in that room, chances are pretty strong that you do want to be a teacher, but we're scared deep down inside that we're not good enough. We're scared that we're not experienced enough, or we're just scared to be in front of the room, scared to be seen and heard. And so the first thing I would say is to don't ever play small. If you're in a teacher training program and you want to teach, own that and say that right from day one. And because it is so much time that you invest and money into this new career. So don't ever play small. If you have a dream, own it and share that with as many people as you can. And then the other thing I would say is, the confidence to teach, to own a room, stand in front of a room, is not going to come from hiding in a corner at home, from hiding in your closet. The only way, and you'll attest to this, that you become confident teaching a class is by teaching a class. You can't ever go around something. You have to go through it. And so as messy as that is, find a way to make yourself comfortable. So if you're nervous about teaching your first few classes or getting up to speed as a teacher, then I wouldn't suggest you go out and teach a 50-person, 5:30 p.m. class. It's good. You're going to give yourself heart failure. Mm-hmm. So, well, could you create that would make you feel comfortable? So that could be teaching like a couple of your friends or a family member, and just teaching them for free maybe until, you build up that confidence. And then from there, you can start to go to bigger classes, and then you can maybe start to charge people. And so some people do graduate and they have 100% confidence to go out and do it. Then go for it. But just in my experience, the majority of people that I see, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, do feel scared to do it, or do feel like they're not good enough, or they don't have enough expertise to be able to be a teacher.
Yeah, definitely. I would completely agree with that. I know even for me, coming out of teacher training, I knew I wanted to teach, and I was quite honest with that, but I was coming back to a community with a lot of really good yoga teachers, and I definitely felt like I wasn't good enough to teach in this community with them. So I really played it cool when I got back from my teacher training. Like, I say played it cool as in didn't assert myself, but I thought I was playing it cool. Like, I was like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just teach as jobs come available. Like, I'm not too worried about it. I've got my whole life to be a teacher. And now I can see that so clearly as a way that I was so scared to go up to the studio owners that I knew were so amazing and be like, I'm a new teacher and I'd really love to teach for you.
And the reality is that we're all drawn to confident people, because confidence, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Mm-hmm. Arrogance is when you're cocky and you have nothing to back it up. But confidence is just purely alignment and self-love of, I have a gift and I really want to do this and I know that I can help. And so that's a beautiful quality that whether it's your romantic partner, your friend partner, your family member, your colleague, whoever it is in life, we're naturally drawn to people who are confident, which means that they love themselves. And so when you are going up to a studio owner, and I'm not saying fake it and lie, I'm just saying you go up to them and tell the truth. Say, hey, I've just done this training. I want to teach so bad and I am absolutely terrified. Would you be able to help me put together a mock class? Could I teach something to other teachers? Or create a plan where you're shadowing someone. Presencing is one of my favorite soft skills that I give to people. And presencing is really quite simply saying what is going on in your present moment or your current life situation. So you could say, hey, you know what? I really want to teach so badly. This is my dream. And yet I'm completely terrified and I don't know what's going to happen when I get in front of the class. And guarantee the studio owner or whoever is going to have a good chuckle, because you know what? They were there too at some point. We all were. Mm-hmm. And so just own it and speak the truth, speak from your heart, speak to why you want to be a yoga teacher. And again, not from the head, from the heart. And the one piece of advice, because I coach a lot of students, but then I also do some training for yoga teacher training programs, and I'll do like the coaching piece around how to build your confidence in front of the room. And the one piece of advice that I always say to people, hold this in your heart when you're teaching your first class, is just focus on loving your students. And quite often we think about having to use fancy Sanskrit names or sequencing a really, really awesome class, or being really fancy, or doing something really complex, or doing like really advanced postures that is going to impress people. But that's all coming from your head, from your ego. I want you to get in your heart, and I want you to go into that room, and I want you to love those students. Show them that you care. Be vulnerable. Connect with them, see their body, see who has injuries. Like, you can just, when you really let go of the ego and the thinking, you can really get in such a beautiful place of connecting with your students and creating a safe environment, and make it your intention to touch their heart in class. Don't stress about using fancy Sanskrit, because you know what? Majority of people are just intimidated by that anyways. So focus on loving your students and creating the safest environment that you can. And those are the best yoga classes.
Yeah, definitely. That's really beautiful advice. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I think too, something that I've really found through my teaching is getting over this fear of making mistakes. Like, I feel like when I first started, it was like, I don't want to screw up like my lefts and my rights, and I don't want to like say hand when I meant foot. And what I've really learned is that, you know, it's so humanizing when a yoga teacher does that. And I feel like it brings the students back to this, like, oh, right, they're just a person and they're, you know, just doing their thing out there. And it makes them almost feel like it's okay if they make a mistake.
Absolutely. Because really, when you think about it, I think I love that you brought that up. And I have, I'm sure as you do, a lot of funny stories of what people have done over the years to remember their lefts and rights. So whether it's like writing in marker on your hands, L and R, or on your feet, I'm sure we could probably share funny stories around what people have done. But as far as making mistakes in class, you are essentially a leader. And the most important thing you can do as a leader isn't be perfect. It's about being human and being accessible to people. And so we teach people not by our perfection, but by our natural ability to recover from mistakes. Can I share an example?
Yeah, definitely.
So I have, since I'm not teaching anymore, I still obviously take class every day, or Monday to Friday, and sometimes I take the weekends off. And I have a studio here where I like to practice. And one of the students who was there, one of the teachers that's there used to be my student. So I think that's really cool, full circle, to kind of be in her class now.
Yeah.
It was an early morning class, and we rocked up, and everyone was standing outside the studio. Like, worst nightmare ever. She had slept in. We've all been there, but when she showed up to class, she was all frazzled and frantic and completely out of her, out of her zone. And so she felt really bad, as we all would, right? That's our biggest fear, is to like miss a class. And it sort of set her off her game, and she wouldn't let it go. And I said to her afterwards, I said, it's not about not making mistakes, because life is just one big growth opportunity. It's about the integrity that you show, and the integrity comes from how you handle your mistakes. So, for example, if that happens, you make an apology to the people that started the class, and then you let it go. So if you screw up your left and your right, or you miss the tail end of a sequence because you took too deep onto the left side and you forgot half of it on the right, apologize, clear it up, and then let it go. Don't keep bringing it up in class, because chances are your students have let it go. And then when you bring it up, it just keeps reminding them. And that I find, and this is my personal opinion, but I find that distracting. So if you're a teacher, you make a mistake, acknowledge it, and then just let it go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really good advice. Yeah, the alarm thing is like a nightmare for me for 6 a.m. classes.
I know we always joke that you sleep with one eye open. Like you never really go into a full sleep because you're, you go to bed at 8:30 or 9 so that you can still get a good night's sleep. But, I'm convinced that those nights you don't sleep as well because you're really, you're terrified. And all my students would always have my cell phone number so they could text me if I slept in. But
that's such a good idea to have like somebody else that's kind of like accountable for you.
Totally.
I think the only night before a 6 a.m. class when I was teaching them is that I actually slept well was when my boyfriend was actually going to get up at 5 as well. And I was like, okay, so I have 2 alarms set and you have 1 set as well. Like there's no chances that this can go wrong.
Right. That's great. And you've got someone else that's going to help you get out of bed, right?
The worst part is that my alarm went off and then my second alarm went off and he goes, can you reset my alarm for 6:30, please?
Aww.
I was like, damn you. I have to get up. But
yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah. And so at what point did you transition into doing retreats?
Oh, okay. A couple years ago. Well, it's funny. My whole, looking back on it now, I love that Steve Jobs, he does a commencement speech about connecting the dots. If anybody's ever curious about that, it's so brilliant. And it's quite simply that when you're in the moment and things are happening to you, you don't really understand it, but you look back on your life and you're like, oh, it was like all these little puzzle pieces that I was collecting on the way. And so for me, because I'd always worked in marketing for high growth companies, we did retreats all the time. So we would take either employees away for like a weekend team building, or we would take clients away on very like high end trips. So we would take them like, sailing on a yacht or like a helicopter ride or some sort of big splashy weekend. So I've done big like product launches and we sponsored some Olympic sailors for a couple years. And so we did a lot of promotional events with them and launch events. So event management was always kind of in my DNA. I'd done that for years. And then the other puzzle pieces were the teaching, the coaching, the facilitation and running workshops, which I, learned later in life. And then the marketing to be able to kind of have the business side of things to understand how to price a retreat and how to put that all together. So, although I've been doing events for years, I ran my first own, Julie's own retreat about 3 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so kind of like I was talking about the safety and the first time teaching, retreats was kind of like that for me. So I did a local retreat just to start and had it somewhere close by, and it was just a weekend one, and did that really small. And then from there, I sort of build up the confidence to take people away to a destination retreat.
And where was the first destination that you went to?
To Mexico.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. We have this really, really special eco-chic resort that we found, and it's been purpose-built just to be a retreat center. And so they only take 50 people. So it's really, really nice. But beautiful food, open air suites, like all the little casitas only have 3 walls. So they're open air to see the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Yeah, really special.
That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of things have you learned through like business lessons, coaching lessons as a yoga teacher through running retreats? Sorry.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for you to really build community. And so coaching people one-on-one is great, and you get to do a lot of deep work, but to take someone away, like there's a difference between me coaching someone for 2 1-hour sessions a month versus getting them on a plane, unplugging them from their life, and having them for a deep dive for an entire week. It is so intensive and transformative. And that's why I really love it. I always, I have a tagline for the retreat side of my business, which is, we're raising consciousness one retreat at a time. Because I think one of the things that we suffer from desperately in our society right now is connection. I feel like we're all, overly connected to our devices, and we're communicating through words, but we're not connecting. And so I feel like unplugging from our life, being off technology, not necessarily off the grid, but like, not glued to your phone, 24 hours a day.
Yes.
And just being in a place where you're connected with nature, you're connected to other people, and you're actually taking time out of your life to really deep dive and do a check-in with, am I happy? Because so many of us just measure our success with how much money we happen to be making right now. And, there's so many other measures to success, whether it's your relationships or how much time you're spending each week having fun, whether you're focusing on personal growth, what does your home life or personal environment look like? And so really just to check in and have that time for yourself to say, hey, am I even happy? Like I'm working like crazy, but is this doing what I want to do? And so I think being able to take people away and really transform them intensely like that is really, really powerful way to build a brand, but also build a community.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it'd be like such a good feeling to come away from that and know how much of an impact you had on the people in your life, in your community.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps as you say that. I have, the group that I took away in November, my one retreat that because I love branding, I sort of package up my retreats with like a name and a theme. And so this one that I ran in November was called Thrive. And so my Thrivers that came with me, last year, there's a big group of them here in Toronto. They're awesome. And I knew all of them and most of them individually. And now they're all best friends. And so we still get together for little reunions. We were just together for dinner a couple weeks ago. And so we're planning our next activity. So it's become this little group of people now that we have, that we're keeping in touch with. And so that's really cool.
That is really neat. It's almost like it makes me think about doing a yoga teacher training. I did a 30-day intensive training in Bali. And so I met people from around the world, but just having those 30 days together where we learned so much about yoga and ourselves, it's like we're kind of bonded in this way that I'm not bonded with other people.
Oh, absolutely. And there's something about being away that really helps that. And, we have people around like in the West Coast as well who came and joined us. And so we all sort of keep in touch on Facebook. And so it's just, you've shared this experience, right? You've shared this transformative mini chapter in your life. And so you're just linked and bonded forever with them. And so seeing them just reminds you and takes you back to that feeling of what it was like and, how much you changed and how much you grew while you were away.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so I know you're launching a new project or that's kind of already starting to grow and whatnot. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my new baby that I've launched is called Retreat You. And, I'll tell you the full story actually, because it's another kind of cute thing. I talk about, my business name being divinely sent to me before I was ready to be an entrepreneur. So that was a big wink from the universe. And I feel like Retreat You was another big wink. And, so what happened was I started running retreats and then I ended up being connected with one of my clients who is a travel agent and wants to help yoga teachers run retreats. Cause, as you know, your whole purpose is that yoga teachers sometimes don't always have the business background to know how to, collect money and, calculate prices and margin and do contracts. So she has that expertise as a travel agent. So she works with them and has built this whole retreat agency business around that. And then I have some other retreat related clients that came into my path. And so that was one wing from the universe. So I helped her create a workshop to help her find clients. And we were teaching people how to run a retreat. So what's your mindset going to be? How do you come up with content and curriculum? How do you find and book people? How do you calculate pricing and strategy? And so we did this free 3-hour workshop and got really great response. And then I ran it again as a webinar a couple times. And then I ran it again when she took us away to St. Lucia in last fall. And we ran it again there with some retreat leaders. And then I ran it again at my other retreat in the fall because there was a couple yoga teachers and people wanting to run retreats there. And I think that was like the final wink and the slap in the head or wink from the universe. I don't know what you call it. And I said, hey, I think there's like a huge opportunity here to teach people how to run retreats. So what Retreat You is a learning, it's a website, but it's also a community. So it's so much more than just a course because a lot of people think that it's just like an 8-week course and you watch a couple videos, but this is different. So as I've talked a lot today about mindset, obviously it's something that I'm really passionate about, because when I have people say they want to do something, but then 2 years later I meet up with them and they haven't done it yet, that breaks my heart. Mm-hmm. And so I know as a coach that I can get people to that place where they have the confidence to do it. And so I'm not just sharing the 5-step process of these are all the, boxes you have to tick off to run your retreat. I'm actually going to get to the point where I'm teaching people how to develop the right mindset, how to understand that you have to sell your retreat. You can't just, hand out a bunch of postcards or leave them in Lululemon store and think that people will book your retreat. Like, you actually have to step up and sell your retreat. It doesn't sell itself. And so I walk people through that process of what to do. And so there's a whole website of training videos that people can watch. And then I've built a Facebook community where we can hold each other accountable to what they're doing. And the people who are in that dreaming phase of, I want to run a retreat in a year or 2 years from now, can actually be a witness and watch all the other people as they go through step 1 to step done of running their retreat. So it's really giving people the confidence by being part of a community to see what it actually is like.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so it's rather than just course, it's a community. And so people sign up and have lifetime membership to that.
Cool. I love the idea of like having a community with people who are doing the same thing as you. Like, I know in my experience I've been a part of a few different communities with different projects I've worked on. And I know for me, a podcasting community has been the most helpful, but it's so cool to know, one, that you're not alone with the things that you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And two, that, maybe you're dealing with something that somebody's already been through and they're like, it's okay. Like, it's going to get better. It's going to come to this point, and they can kind of reassure you. Like, I know so many times you wonder if you should just give up with what you're doing.
Yeah. And, I feel like it's not just scary or harmful to have fear. It's when we hold on to fear and we hide it. And so that's why the community aspect of it is so important, and not just about the fear to say, hey, you know what? I'm just about to launch, but I'm terrified, so I'm going to give up. And so you post that and you better believe that you're going to have a bunch of people jumping all over you saying, no, you're not going to give up. Let's get on the phone and I'm going to walk you through this. And it's not just the scary points, but it's also what we are really, really poor at, which is giving ourselves credit. So giving ourselves like a pat on the back. So that's the other part that I really want to build, is to celebrate successes. So whatever that little milestone is going to be. So maybe it's like hosting your first retreat, or maybe it's the first sign up that you get, or the first time that you're all sold out, or whatever that happens to be, whatever that one courageous step or that one glorious milestone is for you. I want you to be able to have people in that community who understand what you're going through and really can witness what your courage is and what your milestone is, and really help you celebrate it, because it's not just about having support. It's about being able to celebrate and be proud of what your milestones are.
Yes. I love that so much, because as supportive as, your family or friends can be, sometimes it can only go so far if they don't actually know, the labor that you're putting into something or how hard it was. Whereas people who are doing it too, I feel like they can just celebrate with you on a different level.
They know what you've really been through. And, so for me, my family is like my biggest cheerleaders. And so they'd support me no matter what. And so having support from a stranger who doesn't really know me all that well, it's really cool too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's amazing. It's amazing too when somebody's like, yes, like I know what you struggled to do to get here because I did the same thing.
And the leadership component of it, which is once you're well along your way, it's time to give back, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact Kevin Spacey quote, but he said something like, when you reach the height of your success, it's time to send the elevator back down and help someone else up. And so if you got a few under your belt, it's time for you to reach out and help somebody else out. So maybe that's hopping on a call. Maybe that's giving them input for feedback on their flyer, helping them pick an image. Because we're in the same group, there's a little bit of a rite of passage when you launch a podcast. Can I tell this story?
Yes.
in our community, which is when you're about to launch and you're picking your artwork that you're going to use for, iTunes and is really going to be represented for your podcast. What everybody does in our podcasting community is they post it in the Facebook group and ask for people to give you feedback and say, which one do you like? 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then it starts this like plethora of, I like A. No, I like B with the writing from C. And it's this whole little dialogue that, I don't know about your experience, Amanda, but for me, that was special. That was that like ritualistic rite of passage. I'm now part of the group. This is my artwork they're looking at. I feel good. I feel like it's my time.
Yeah. It's cool. Like, I know when I joined, like my boyfriend and I's podcast had already been around for quite a while. I just felt like right away that everyone was so welcoming. Like I was just like, hey guys, I'm new to the group. And it was like immediately like people adding me as friends and like, welcome. We're so excited. Like, what's your podcast? Have you launched? And I was like, oh, this is like so amazing.
Yeah. So warm, right?
Yeah. So it's really cool to have that. Like as much as, my mom will share every single thing I post on Facebook and she'll share our podcast around and she's definitely supportive, but there's still a part of her that's kind of like, I don't really understand exactly what a podcast is, but whatever you're doing is cool. So it's nice when it's like, oh, what's going on with Libsyn today? And like none of my friends are like, sorry, Lib what? Whereas the podcasters group, these people are like, yes, I'm having the same thing, or don't worry, it'll clear itself up.
Yeah, they just get it, right? They just get it.
Yeah. And so how can people find Retreat You?
So the best thing to do is you can head to retreatu.co. And so that's U for university. So RETREATU.co. And so they can head over there. I have the program in beta testing. So I'm taking people right now at a really discounted price because I want people in to sort of give me feedback, tell me if there's anything that they want to see me improve or change or ideas of things that I didn't include that they would like to see. So I really want this to be kind of a grassroots community that really helps to build something as a foundation before we start growing and adding a ton of people. So if anybody else in your community is interested in finding out more, just kind of wants to have a little bit of a tour, they can reach out to me, and they can find my info at thecorporateyogi.com.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm super excited to check out Retreat You and see sort of more about it. I know I watched your launch video and I was like, this is such an awesome idea.
Oh, cool.
Because as much as I think you can have a business background, I feel like retreats is it's kind of a whole nother ball game.
It is. And I think because it seems so dreamy and so fun that people think it's going to be easy. But, I'll be honest, it's a lot of work. But once you get that under your belt and get that learning, it is amazing. And to be witness to people's transformation, there's just nothing like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a gift.
What do you think is the hardest thing about running a retreat?
The top thing, and I'll say this with all the people that I've worked with, is the selling. Just like I said, people think that they can just print off a bunch of postcards, announce it once in class, and then it'll just sell on its own. And it doesn't work like that. I joke sometimes, unless you have the brand recognition of Oprah Winfrey or Tony Robbins, like you can't just announce something and have it sell out. Like you have to have conversations with people. And so that's where, as kind of like what you do, it's like bringing that business mindset to people. So teaching them how it has to be like a campaign that you talk to people and say, hey, I've got this thing coming up. And what do you think? And, oh, I'm kind of interested. Okay, let me send you more information. And so you drip feed bits and pieces of information to educate people, because retreats is still kind of a new industry for a lot of people. So they have to understand, what that's all about and how it works. And so there's lots of different things that you can do as part of the selling process to make that a lot easier. But straight up, you have to understand that it will not sell itself, right? So you have to have a community and you have to actually do the work to have the conversations with people, or whether it's maybe emails that you send out, or I quite like Facebook and social media campaigns. I find that a really easy way for me to have a global reach and have people sign up.
That's awesome.
So whatever medium is comfortable for you, but you have to, and there's fun things you can do, like having an info night to talk about your retreat, or one of my clients did like a wine and cheese to talk about her retreat, which is cool. So, I mean, it's up to you. Like, look at your gifts, look at your zone of genius, figure out what you're really good at, and then use that to help leverage you organizing it and to sell it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you used any like platforms on the internet? Like I know there's one that's like bookingretreats.com, I think it's called. I feel like Trip Tribe is kind of one of the newer ones in that sort of area where they'll kind of connect you with different retreats and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny actually. One of the videos that I have in my selling section is around using retreat listing directories retreat directory listings. And there's lots of sites out there that you can use, and they all have different models. I was actually just on a phone chat yesterday with Cameron from Retreat Guru, and so he has another site where you can do you can list your website, list your retreat, and people will find it. And the great thing with that is that you've already got warm traffic. So you might go out to your community and try to sell your retreat, and there will be interested people in that community. But if you list your retreat on a directory, you know that everyone going there wants to run a retreat or wants to attend a retreat, right? So essentially that's what I call warm traffic, because they're already in that mindset of knowing they want to go on one. So that can be a really great accelerator to help you sell it.
Yeah, definitely. I know I was just asking because that's my boyfriend and I went on a yoga retreat before we came home from a big trip in South America, and we used, I think, bookingretreats.com.
Okay.
Yeah, there's I'm pretty sure it's bookingretreats.com, and there's a ton of retreats on there, but it's kind of like a good platform for that.
It is, because you can pick any date, any location, and they usually have good like recommended retreats as well.
Yeah, and you can see reviews on it, that's always really important to me, like to know how somebody else's experience was if I'm going to pay a bunch of money to something.
Of course, yeah.
Amazing. Do you have anything else you want to share with Retreat You?
No, I think that's it. I mean, if there's anybody who is interested, I would love to hear from you. I've got this beta offering open until March 31st. So anytime this week, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you're just curious or want to have a little tour around, let me know. And it was such a pleasure to chat with you today, Amanda.
Yeah, it was so amazing to have you on the podcast, Julie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, and I really love your vision for really helping yoga professionals to really understand the business side of things. I think it's great that you're giving people this free advice.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so there's the interview with Julie Zuzek. And Julie is such a fabulous guest to have on. I feel like she provides so much value, and she's just so interesting to talk to with her background of teaching yoga, doing marketing and communications, business consulting, and now developing Retreat You. So if designing and developing your own retreats is something you're thinking about for the future, I would definitely jump on this opportunity. She's got Retreat You up at a fabulous price right now. So you can find more information at retreatyou.co or thecorporateyogi.com. And of course, there'll be links on the show notes. So if you want to check that out, it's at www.mbomyoga.com. Now, as always, thank you so much for being a part of the MBOM community. If you want to check out the Facebook page, it's MBOM Yoga. You can always send me an email at info@mbomyoga.com. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.